"You the guy the general sent?" The voice, sharp and laced with disbelief, cut through the cavernous hum of the maintenance bay. Lieutenant Miller, all crisp angles and youthful confidence, stood with his arms crossed, a data slate tucked under one arm. He looked Gerald Walsh up and down, his gaze lingering on the faded flannel shirt and the deep lines etched around the old man's eyes. "You've got to be kidding me." Gerald, who had seen 78 winters, offered no reaction. His hands, gnarled but steady, rested on the handles of a canvas tool bag that looked as old as he was. His calm blue eyes swept over the scene, the controlled chaos of engineers in digital camouflage, the tangle of thick cables snaking across the polished concrete floor, and the silent, monolithic beast at the center of it all. The M1 Abrams tank. It sat there like a patient on an operating table, its gun dormant, its spirit broken. All around it, laptops glowed with complex schematics and error codes, monuments to a problem that technology could name but not solve. Miller took a step forward, his polished boots clicking with impatience. "Look, sir, no disrespect, but we've got a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment down and a hard deadline from command. We don't have time for a field trip." He gestured vaguely at Gerald's simple attire. "Do you have any credentials? Base access? Anything?" The maintenance bay was a cathedral of modern warfare, a space so large that voices echoed and the scent of diesel, hydraulic fluid, and ozone hung permanently in the air. For 3 days, this cathedral had been a place of failed worship. The best engineers of the 1st Armored Division had thrown everything they had at the crippled Abrams. The issue was as baffling as it was infuriating. A phantom pressure drop in the turret traverse system. Every diagnostic test, every sensor check, every manual override came back with the same result. System nominal. Yet the turret remained sluggish, groaning under the strain of movement, its hydraulic heart beating with a fatal arrhythmia that no one could trace. It was a ghost in the machine, and it was mocking them. Lieutenant Miller was in charge of this exorcism, and his patience had evaporated 12 hours ago. He was a product of a new army, an officer who trusted algorithms and digital readouts more than gut feelings. He saw the world in binary code, in pass-fail tests, and now General Thompson, the one man he needed to impress, had sent him this, a relic. "Name's Gerald Walsh," the old man said, his voice a low rumble, quiet but carrying. He reached into his worn leather wallet and produced a simple laminated visitor's pass. Miller barely glanced at it. "Right, Mr. Walsh. And what exactly are your qualifications? Did you work on these in a factory? A museum, maybe?" A few of the younger engineers nearby snickered. They were tired, frustrated, and happy for any distraction, especially one that affirmed their own modern expertise over what looked like a misplaced grandfather. Gerald's eyes didn't leave the tank. "Something like that," he murmured. He set his heavy canvas bag on the floor with a soft thud. The sound was starkly organic in the synthetic electronic environment. He began to unroll it, revealing not a collection of gleaming modern instruments, but a set of old, oil-stained tools. They were dark with age and use, their wooden handles worn smooth by a lifetime of pressure, their steel heads bearing the nicks and scars of countless stubborn bolts. "Oh, this is rich," Miller said, louder now, playing to his audience of frustrated soldiers. "We've got guys with PhDs in mechanical engineering running quantum diagnostics, and command sends us a guy with a hammer and some rusty wrenches." Gerald ignored him. His movements were slow, deliberate, a study in economy. He wasn't wasting a single motion. He selected a long, thin steel rod and walked toward the silent Abrams, his worn work boots making no sound on the floor. He ran a hand along the cold steel of the turret ring, his touch gentle, like a doctor palpating a patient. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the vehicle," Miller commanded, his voice hardening. "It's a sensitive piece of military hardware, not a classic car." Gerald didn't seem to hear him. He knelt, his old knees protesting with a soft groan, and laid his ear against the tank's hull, tapping it gently with the steel rod. He was listening. The absurdity of the scene was thick enough to taste. The young lieutenant, a master of digital systems, was watching an old man use a technique that belonged in the age of steam engines. The engineers exchanged glances, a mixture of pity and ridicule. This was the Hail Mary? This was the secret weapon the general had promised them. "That's it. I've seen enough," Miller snapped. He turned to his master sergeant, a seasoned NCO named Evans, who had been watching the exchange with a stony expression. "Sergeant, find out who cleared this man for access. I want him off my floor. Now." Master Sergeant Evans hesitated for a fraction of a second too long. He had seen the general's name on the access request. He knew General Thompson didn't make whimsical decisions, but a lieutenant's order was an order. "Sir," he began, but Miller cut him off. "Now, Master Sergeant." As Evans reluctantly moved to intercept Gerald, the old man pulled another tool from his roll. It was a bizarre-looking wrench, a heavy piece of steel with a T-bar handle and a head that had clearly been modified. It was crudely welded in places, ground down in others, a Frankenstein's monster of a tool that no manufacturer would ever claim. Miller let out a short, derisive laugh. What in God's name is that? Did you make that in your garage? What are you going to do with it, beat the tank into submission? The insult hung in the air. For the first time, Gerald's methodical movements paused. He looked down at the ugly custom-made wrench in his hand, and for a fleeting moment the humming bay around him dissolved. The world was not concrete and fluorescent lights, but mud and the torrential freezing rain of the Iraqi desert in 1991. He wasn't 78, he was a 30-something master gunner, his face smeared with grease and grime. The sound wasn't the hum of diagnostics, but the distant, percussive thunder of an artillery duel. His Abrams, Bad Penny, had taken a hit to the turret drive. It was stuck, a death sentence in a tank battle. The standard-issue torque wrench was too bulky. The angle was impossible. They were dead in the water. So, under the hellish green glow of chemical lights, using a piece of salvaged metal from a destroyed enemy vehicle and a field welder, he had forged this ugly, brutish, beautiful tool. The tool that had saved his crew. The wrench in his hand wasn't just a piece of scrap metal. It was a memory forged in fire and desperation. He blinked, and the maintenance bay solidified around him again. He saw the smirking lieutenant, the curious engineers, the approaching master sergeant. He saw the challenge in their eyes, the complete and utter dismissal. He hadn't asked to be here. He had been perfectly content in his quiet workshop, rebuilding a lawnmower engine. But the general had called, and you don't say no to the general. Miller, his patience finally gone, pulled out his radio. Base security, this is Lieutenant Miller in Maintenance Bay 7. I require an escort for a civilian non-compliant. He spoke with the clipped, self-important authority of a man who had never truly been challenged. As Miller relayed the instructions, Master Sergeant Evans made a decision. He had seen enough. He had seen the quiet dignity in the old man's face, the practiced ease of his hands. He'd seen the flash of something in his eyes when Miller mocked the wrench, not anger but a deep, distant sorrow. Evans knew the smell of bullshit and he knew the feel of competence. The lieutenant was reeking of the former, and the old man radiated the latter. He slipped his phone from his pocket, turning his back to the lieutenant. He found the number for the general's aide-de-camp. The phone barely rang once before it was answered. Major, it's Master Sergeant Evans down in Bay 7, he said, his voice low and urgent. You need to get the general down here right now. The specialist he sent for the Abrams, Lieutenant Miller, is having him removed by the MPs. I think he's making a very big mistake. A pause on the other end of the line, then a string of curses that would have made a drill sergeant blush. Stay there, Evans. We're on our way. The call ended. The cavalry was coming. And for the first time in 3 days, Master Sergeant Evans felt a sliver of hope that the ghost in the machine might finally be exorcised. The injustice in the air was thick, but the promise of its correction was now racing across the base. Inside the sprawling command headquarters, General Thompson listened to the report from his aide, his face growing darker with every word. The phone was still pressed to his ear, but his mind was miles away, back in the swirling dust of a desert war. What do you mean Miller is kicking him out? The general's voice was a low growl, a seismic event contained within the wood-paneled office. Does that arrogant young fool have any idea who he is talking to? No, sir. The aide's voice crackled from the speakerphone. He just sees an old man. Evans said he's calling security. Thompson slammed his free hand on the solid oak desk, rattling a row of neatly arranged challenge coins. Get me the 3rd Armored Division archives. Now, pull the file on Master Gunner Gerald Walsh. I want his complete service record. And I want you to highlight Operation Desert Storm, specifically the Battle of 73 Easting. Then get my vehicle and meet me at the door in 2 minutes. As the aide scrambled to comply, the general paced, his fury a palpable force in the room. He knew Miller, a sharp kid, top of his class at West Point, an expert in the new digital army. But he was green, and his arrogance was a liability. He saw experience as an outdated data set, easily replaced by a faster processor. A moment later, the aide's voice returned, breathless. Sir, I have it. My God, Walsh Gerald, Master Gunner. Credited with 14 confirmed armor-to-armor kills in 72 hours. Awarded the Silver Star for valor after holding a flank against a superior enemy force when his platoon's targeting systems failed. Developed over 30 non-standard field expedient repairs for the M1 A1 platform, many of which were later adopted into official maintenance doctrine. Sir, His battalion nicknamed him the Ghost in the Machine. Exactly, Thompson bit out. Because he could fix things no one else could. He could feel what was wrong with a 70-ton tank just by being near it. Now get that car. Back in Bay 7, the final act of the drama was unfolding. 2 military police officers, young and impassive, had arrived. They stood at attention, waiting for Miller's command. Miller turned to Gerald, a smirk of triumph on his face. "All right, sir, time to go. We appreciate you stopping by, but as you can see, we have actual work to do here." He gestured dismissively towards the MPs. "They'll show you the way out. Please escort Mr. Walsh from the facility." Gerald didn't argue. He didn't protest. He simply looked at the silent Abrams one last time, a flicker of what looked like pity in his eyes. He slowly bent down and began to pack his old tools, each one placed carefully back into its worn slot in the canvas roll. The metallic click of the security escort's handcuffs jingling on their belts seemed to echo in the sudden quiet. Miller, his authority asserted, turned back to his frustrated team. "See? This is what happens when we rely on relics and rumors. Let's get back to the diagnostics. Rerun the full suite. The problem is in the code, people. We just have to find it." He had pushed past the point of no return, cementing his ignorance in front of his entire crew. His words were still hanging in the air when a new sound pierced the bay's ambient hum. It was the high-pitched squeal of tires on pavement, a sound of extreme urgency. Every head turned towards the massive open bay doors. A black command vehicle, its official plates and flags denoting its passenger's rank, slid to a halt just outside. It was flanked by 2 sand-colored Humvees, their engines rumbling like angry lions. The doors of the command car flew open and out stepped General Thompson. He was a tall, imposing man, but today he seemed larger, his presence amplified by a cold, controlled rage. The 2 stars on his collar glittered under the fluorescent lights. He was followed by his aide and the formidable base sergeant major. They didn't walk. They strode, moving with a velocity and purpose that sent a ripple of